Yeah, we started. Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining. We're gonna learn from Ruben today. Before I hand over this to Ruben, would like to just go through a few slides where it's more about networking introduction. We already spend a few minutes, and you can share a LinkedIn profile to each other and get to know each other if you don't yet. And then Ruben gonna jump in, and then we're gonna end at the end. It will be Q&A. Well, who we are, I think this I always put this slide because it's in my heart. We have been part of PAS for a long time, which is the one of the world largest data professional community. It I would say now in the post put us in a kind of past tense because it was there till the pandemic. Actually, from this year, February, PAS has been dissolved due to some of their economic crisis, but still the organization we are running that is from PAS. Then we build our own platform, nonprofit organization called Toronto Data Professional Community. But this one just to show you like how our organization drive from the past and to our the community what we run right now. And we used to have many events in the past where I really love to see all this picture when we meet each other in person. I remember like we met Ruben. Ruben was speaking one of our event.
Is that me there?
Maybe
Somewhere,
somewhere. Yeah, you must be there
somewhere
somewhere.
next to Courtney. I'm
Especially
just.
when Alberto is there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you know, Alberto is here. Those who know Alberto Ferrari, actually, he's a BI guru, you could say. And then we also had event in Microsoft Mississauga office. We had so many events actually. Now we moved to virtual. Hopefully, we'll get back again to our in-person event. Hopefully soon. And that is our community. The same goal, same inspiration. We really would like to share knowledge. Knowledge sharing and explore new technologies. And would like if you'd like to speak or share your ideas, please also reach to us. We can always get get to know each other ideas and share the new topics and new ideas with all of the other members. Next event we have monthly events. So our next event will be also very exciting where we're gonna learn SQL Server, how can you audit it in free? Because think about the auditing SQL Server, you may have to buy some tools which could be costly. So um, our next speaker, she gonna talk about how we can actually do the auditing free. And we got our partner, Dimension Strategic Incorporation. We're actually gold partner. They're supporting us from the beginning, so we're very happy that they're still supporting us, continues supporting us for Toronto data professional community. This one I put because we as a citizens of Earth, we have some responsibility towards Earth. Um, and the partner Europeans, they come with like create the awareness. They're like our sustainability promoter. What they would like to, they're gonna give us some slide who's gonna actually create the awareness to all of us how we can care our art or where you can be more conscious. For example, look at this picture. What you can see wrong here, right? So beautiful lady, but see the water tap is on. I think we sometimes we do this, right? And so we could be a bit conscious. If we just bit conscious, then we can actually avoid wastage of water. So yeah, um, that's it. And thank you. Um, our event sponsorship. Anyone would like to also be part of with Toronto Data Professional Community, please feel free to reach us. That being said, I'll now stop it and give you Ruben so you access. I think then you should able to share the screen.
Thanks, Paul. Can you guys see it?
I can see it.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, perfect. And so this is my second time speaking at Pulse event. I've been at a number of them as a visitor, and once I even presented a way more technical topic. The previous talk was on Power BI and how to handle like huge data sets and build hybrid models in Power BI. And I was still with Questrade when doing that talk. And for the past year, I've actually started my own consulting company where I've been advising execs on data strategy. So today's talk is actually quite a bit more high level. It's more about economics of data, and we're going to talk about data centricity and how data-centric organizations are different from system-centric or app-centric organizations, and how is it that they're so much more efficient economically, and why do I think that they're the only type of organization that's eventually going to survive in this digital world. Okay, so let's dive right in. Basically, already gave you the agenda. So this is what we're going to cover today. So a couple of words about me. My background is technology and data. So I've prior to Questrade, I spent time building large-scale software with a number of Silicon Valley companies, and then I spent 12 years at Questrade, 10 of which I spent doing data and analytics, and essentially being the head of data and analytics there, building up those functions. And for the past year, I've been mainly doing data strategy, advising a number of companies. Okay, so what is a data-centric organization? And before we answer this question, let me ask you guys the following. What matters more, the wallet or the money inside it? Just unmute
Definitely
and
money.
answer. Yeah.
Definitely money.
Yeah. So the situation with 99% of today's company is that has historically evolved. It's not that it's by design. It's just historically it has evolved so that the wallets actually decide what to do with the money, right? So technology decides what to do with their information, with the data. Actually, my buddy John Gorman today, he was presenting at another talk, and he gave a perfect analogy of like, imagine wearing a metal glove and trying, to move your fingers, trying to move your hands. So it's this kind of this is how I think, and this is how I feel about the majority of businesses today, that they're putting some kind of metal costume in the form of technology that most of the time is fairly restrictive, and then they're trying to adjust how they operate, how they perform to that technology. So historically, 99% of organizations, majority of them, they have evolved to be application-centric or system-centric, but not information-centric. So a data-centric organization is an organization that actually has a single data model. And that organization, it prioritizes managing data and information over managing systems and technology. So if you think about it, organizations are very dynamic. So our technology comes and goes, people come and go, our org structure changes. What stays is data, what stays is information. And unfortunately, in lots of cases, so this is how it looks in reality, right? Raise your hand if you've ever worked for an organization that has, let's say, has more than 5 systems or 10 systems. There you go. Yeah. So I've seen in financial institutions, I've seen hundreds of systems. Canadian banks have them by the thousands, right? And they have they go buying and buying solutions and building solutions that think they're going to solve their problems. But actually, every solution, every piece of software that you buy or build, typically it comes with its own data model. And that puts a very big burden of complexity and the burden of integration. And so if you think about it, just even if you have like 10 10 systems, basically exponentially the number of integrations you have to do between your systems, it grows, right? And there are different types of architectural approaches trying to solve this. But essentially, you're building this technology silos and building these technology walls, and your information is trapped within them, right? So that's our typical app-centric world of today. Now, what are data-centric organizations doing, which are some smart organizations? I know like a handful that are already there, and I know probably a couple of dozen that are on their way there. So they're working to become more and more data-centric. And does anybody here know Dave Mccomb? Or he's read his books on like data-centric revolution? So if you haven't, I highly recommend it because he describes these issues in depth. Today we're doing just like high-level overview, but this slide illustrates the difference between app-centric world and data-centric world. So in app-centric world, each application has its own database and its own data model, and then it's a lot of effort to try to exchange information, try to sync them, to integrate them, and try to kind of make the whole gamut, the whole kind of technological landscape work for an organization. And in a data-centric world, you have a single data model that's extensible, and it's also kind of it's modeled in such a way that it can accommodate for pretty much like all of your business, 90% of your use cases, and then it integrates seamlessly. If you have anything, there should be like ways of integrating with existing applications. But the reality of today is that technology is so commoditized that you only need a handful of platforms to run pretty much like any type of the business. There's increasing number of technology vendors. They're saying, you know, like we're going to solve this problem for you. We're going to save like, you know, the compliance problem or the security problem or this, that, like, you know, we're going to give you like an HR and it's a system, and it's all silos of data, right? So you're racking up complexity costs and integration costs that you're not even aware of. Yet those capabilities, they determine how your organization is going to function and how it's going to be like, how it's going to innovate, how it's going to be agile. So why data-centric organizations have an advantage? I think we're kind of getting there already. Well, obviously, all of us know that today, pretty much every business is a data business. And Appcentric, like I said, it implies a lot of extra costs. So it's a lot of silos, a lot of extra infrastructure, integration, complexity, agility, and ultimately you're paying also costs in data quality and trust in data. Okay, so this is what most of the organizations have evolved. So think about today's business as a very complex computer. It's a supercomputer where many systems and many people are simultaneously generating and exchanging data, right? Processing data. Now, the data-centric organization is an efficient computer, is a computer that's elegantly built, that doesn't have like many excess parts, and it doesn't. So therefore, running that computer doesn't take many resources. An app-centric organization is a very inefficient computer with a lot of redundancy, unnecessary redundancy, right? With lots of kind of copies of data, lots of unnecessary moving parts, lots of breaking parts that they kind of constantly break. They require maintenance, very, very high maintenance costs, very high cost just to make sense of the information that's inside that computer. So this is my claim, guys, that the digital economy will embrace only those that adopt a data-centric mindset and data-centric organizational design. Just because the organizations that are not data-centric, eventually they're not going to be efficient enough to compete. Because organizations that are data-centric, they can innovate on a much bigger scale and do that much faster. They can afford capabilities that non-data-centric organizations can only dream of, and their costs are very low compared to app-centric or system-centric things. And what role we play here? So I actually consult organizations how to become and excel at being data-centric. I've made my mission just because I've evolved to think that this is kind of the only right way how you can run businesses. At Questrade, I've lived this first person at Questrade when I was responsible for like a majority of the data landscape. I saw dozens and dozens, probably like over 100 systems and vendors come and go. We're doing like hundreds of integrations, building warehouses, data lakes, all of that stuff. So this is all like changing technology landscape. And you see how information lives through all of that changing landscape. And yeah, I got to experience a lot of this pain firsthand. Now let's talk. Yeah,
Ruben, what is the writer name you mentioned?
Dave
Like the
Dave Mccomb. Let me put
Dave.
it in Dave Mccomb. Probably should have added to the slides. Let me see if I can put in the chat here. Do I even see chat window here? I don't know how to trigger chat in this thing.
It's Dave, right?
Yeah, Dave, DAVMCCOMB. It's called Data-Centric Revolution, and he also has another book that was prior to that called Software Wasteland. So he talks about these ideas in depth there.
Sure, no worries. You can go ahead. I'll
Yep.
paste the name.
Yeah. So all the organizations are different. Of course, all of them have different maturity levels, awareness levels. The size, the org structure is different. So there's no single recipe for all of our organizations, you know, like do this and you're going to become data centric. But I'm going to give you a few recommendations, few directions that, or kind of few conditions that need to be there in order for the org to be data centric. And we're going to start with the top. So you need a full understanding of what data centricity is, and you need a buy-in of your executive team, because this is a big change. It's a fairly long, it's going to take a long time, probably depending on the organization, but this is going to need both understanding and commitment of the resources, being able to protect things. So without the understanding and will of the executive team, don't even think about like that this is going to land. Data centricity is not something that can be like, even if you kind of succeed without like within one unit of the business, within one department or one team, it's still I guess there's kind of still benefits to keeping things elegant on that side, but then the bigger picture will still not work. The second very important aspect is being aware of these 5 foundational, I've called them foundational data classes, which is metadata, master data, transactional data, analytical data, and temp data. So they all have core principles that apply regardless of where the data is contained, really, whether this is like a file, a spreadsheet, a sophisticated database, cloud service, whatever it is. So all of these life cycles, they have do's and don'ts. I talk about them separately in a number of talks. I can probably do a talk just on this, but just on high level, I wanted to mention that when these principles are violated, it's very hard for company to be aware of the data that it has, because these core data types or data classes, you can classify all of your structured and 90% of your semi-structured or unstructured data to this into these buckets, and they're going to simplify the decisions that you're going to be making about this data. Number 3 is focusing on company culture. Communicate. You need to build a culture around being data centric. So people need to be aware of what data centricity is, why certain decisions are being made that way. And this is again, depending on your org structure, depending on which roles, which functions in the company are more influential, you'll have to tailor the concept of data centricity to them, and then help them propagate this to their people. Then I really suggest starting things small, but at the same being systematic. You need to develop a plan of, if you have a fully app-centric landscape and you don't even have this kind of high-level meta models of your organization, you need to start small and chip away at this app-centric landscape until you get to the level of data centricity you want. And last but not least, you have to really be good at data modeling. You're going to need graph modeling, you're going to need relational modeling, you're going to need some different types of analytical modeling. And there's no getting away around this, because essentially data centricity means that you're building a model of your business that is abstract, that is based purely on information, and this is not tied to technology. So it's first of all building this graph meta model of all your business, and then be building any auxiliary models that need to support specific functions. But data modeling is a paramount skill that you won't be able to do it without these skills. So this is like a high-level summary of these things. Now, I want to spend a couple of minutes just to talk about the differences between data-centric and app-centric organizations, in like how they look, what are the symptoms of being data-centric versus app-centric. And these are some that I wrote here. So in data-centric organizations, data is shared by design, by culture, by vision, by principle. So it is fairly easy to obtain data, and no copies of it are created unnecessarily. And in app-centric world, data is typically hoarded, siloed, copied, multiplied uncontrollably in many cases. So in data-centric orgs, your technology landscape is mainly elegant and simple. People are moving towards this elegantly built computer. And in app-centric world, technology landscape is complex and it's big typically. In data-centric orgs, people focus on data information, and technology is a tool. Technology is means to get to the information to do what we want to be done with it, right? To give people the experience we want, to give the customers what they want, and internally is to serve the organization how the organization wants to be served. In app-centric world, the company focuses more on technology, on systems, and information and data is often an afterthought. So little to no data silos in data-centric world, multiple data silos in app-centric world. And data-centric world, the level of trust in data and insights is high. In app-centric world, it is typically low because people need to, they're stepping on each other's insights or each other's results obtained from different systems. In data-centric worlds, you can typically see on average higher level of data literacy in the company, and on average it will be lower in app-centric organizations. So people are used to doing less and overall being less data literate. And last but not least, data-centric organization can innovate at a much higher pace. They're much more agile and much more innovative than app-centric organizations. It takes way less resources, way less time in data-centric firms to experiment, to try something new, to modify the landscape. So they kind of plug in different logic and different experiences to already existing data platforms and already existing data model, versus trying to create these data models and integrate things every time from scratch. So now let's do the following. I have like a couple of, I have like few main takeaways. We can do questions and then takeaways, or I can do takeaways and then questions. How do you guys want?
Well, I already have few questions, but I will ask,
Okay,
other people if they have question. I think John may have some question.
here, let's do questions then.
Yeah, yes, I do have a question.
Hmm.
Um, I know you have that picture that was the data-centric model that seems requires we have an ideal model that is fitable for all the applications. I
Yes.
I
Yeah.
don't believe you can find such one, at least not nowadays, right? And
So there is no such thing as ideal model, right? You've
Mhm.
probably heard the phrase all models are wrong, but some of them are useful.
Okay.
So you need a useful model. You need a model that will work for your organization. And when I talk about model,
Hmm.
I don't mean a relational model, not for
Okay.
all. Or so if you're imagining like a database a tabular model that's relational, no, that's not the case. What I mean, it starts from your language, from the taxonomy that you're using, and it's first of all, it's meta model. It's a model that defines like how your different uh, terms work in organization, and then it spreads out to the main entities in organizations, how those are connected. So not going very deep into topic of modeling, I really recommend you read Dave's book. He goes in,
Okay.
like deep into like he explains why this approach works, and he actually has done this in a number of companies. And I have a couple of clients that are very successful in creating this kind of canonical models that power all of business.
Okay. Sure. Before I'm trying to read the book, so whatever the reference,
Mhm.
do you have any, say, a comparison tools or models that close to what you're trying to describe? For example,
Um,
does the Microsoft Dataverse or the Common Data Model
mhm.
could
Mm,
be one of them in
those
that
are
case?
those are attempts, but again, those like Microsoft's Common Data Model,
Mhm.
uh, previously now Dataverse, they are still uh, they're trying to come up with a canonical model that will work for majority of businesses, but it's still their model. They're saying like basically we give you a model so that it's easier for you to kind of bring in data, like store it on our infrastructure in our tools.
Yeah.
And what I mean is completely more abstract, like how I start
Okay.
with this. It starts from being aware just what is like master data, what is transactional, what is metadata, and then there are a few layers within metadata that you can kind of you can go first of all kind of your language, so just your taxonomy, just the terminology part, and then you can go into logical modeling of your organization, which is where we talk about the main concepts, the main relationships, main entities, and then you can go to kind of the third level. You can go more physical. Okay, now this is what ties your logical model with your physical world, and like I know a couple of works that have done fairly advanced things, like they've invented their own metadata format, and they made it mandatory for any system that they're either build or buy. They made it mandatory to read and write to their metadata repository. So essentially, a lot of the business like is controlled from your metadata model. Essentially, you're building a model that defines uh, what data means and how it flows from one place to another, and um,
Right.
that is kind of the I would say that's the pinnacle of what I've seen today. But even if you have a simple metadata model, like but that is very concise, and you say you have to conform to it, and you try to minimize the number of systems that are in the organization without the need. So the organization follows the philosophy that we have to have trusted data about whatever we do, like our operations, our customers, products, everything. So data comes first, and then we're going to think about technology, but like it's not vice versa, right? So like a new CFO comes in and he says, okay, like I need an ERP, and all of a sudden the company goes and buys ERP, and it has another silo of data. Then they get a new marketing officer, and the marketing officer says, hey, I need like a new data management solution or a CRM, things like that. And then kind of the company doesn't think in the coordinates of that, okay, information about customers, I need it to be trusted. Like I need to be well modeled and to do what it's supposed to do, right? So it's thinking, okay, like I need a system to do this. So once you're thinking, I need a system to do this, then you're off the right path. You have to think in the coordinates. This is the main information in my business. Now, what do I want to do with it? What can I do with it, or what do I want to do with it? And then you decide, okay, what are the platforms that are going to enable that? And it's really not a big deal, because today there are cloud data warehouse, or like cloud kind of lake houses, there are cloud analytical platforms, and everything's like super easy compared to how it was like 5-10 years ago, when every single topic was very hard. Like metadata was hard, master data management was hard. You know, every topic was like worth a huge industry.
Yeah, but if you are going to say the cloud, sorry, are you still there?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Your screen seems freezed. With the cloud, such as the data lake or the lake house, whatever, they were seems intend to be just give me the data, right? I don't care about the model. I don't care about the scheme. I'll try to understand it by myself. That seems not to conform well with you.
No, it's not a good approach, for sure, right?
Okay.
So like data by itself, it means nothing, right? Without the context, without metadata, without understanding what it means actually in what context, data does not have value. It's nothing, right? So maintaining that context, creating that context, and maintaining that context, which you do with metadata, this is where the money is. And that's the hard part to accomplish.
Yeah, for sure. You need to understand the data before you can actually process it and consume it.
Yeah. So a bit more, maybe high level talk today, but once you start looking at organizations in a, like information first way, and technology goes after, kind of flip that whole historical pyramid upside down, a lot of things change.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Yep. Anka, if
Thank
you
you.
have any question,
Sure.
I see you. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a lot of questions, but
That's good.
I do have two. I do have something you already cover, but yeah,
so
go
much
ahead.
comes to my mind. So I just, maybe I'll come on video as well. So just wanted to say everything you said makes a lot of sense. So I've been in data world for some time, worked for banks, worked for small companies, and like you said, the challenge is being application centric, and I see it left and right. They buy software, they buy like SAP software, they don't even know what they bought until they know the complexity, and they need Accenture to configure it, and you know, they need a small portion of that software to do something. So I work right now in a company that's trying to be sort of processing data, aggregating data, and it's more investment. So the challenge I have there, they're like buying, you know, different pieces of software because they need for onboarding software, right? They need to be able to do document sign. They need to be able to kind of do a workflow. So you need it for particular sort of approval steps and sort of, you know, passing information to different checkers. Now, the challenge here is, so being data centric it makes completely sense. So I always have conversations with, you know, the sponsors, because they always ask, one of the sponsors being a more senior, right, you know, owner of investors and investment firms. And he said, if someone asks me, where's the code, right? Where do you say it's the code? So the challenge with that is, the coding in so many systems, but the most important code, as you said today, is your data. So if everything, you own that it's valuable to you is the data and how you store it, and as you said, how you use it in different contexts. So one of the things I have to say, the data model, big discussion around it is we're building a data model for the purpose of putting Power BI together and embedding it on our web application. Yes. So we have great experts, they know Power BI, they know Azure, so we're working the first time with Azure for me, because I worked in the past with Google Cloud, and it was completely different. It was more like pure data engineering for Home Depot, building all kinds of, reports for their suppliers. But that was a very data engineering centric department. So right now I'm in a company that's building its own infrastructure, at the same time building processes. They already have a client that's doing the first proof of concept with, and we're at the point where we will be growing. So the part is how you build that data-centric, right, mentality, because everyone is
that's the hardest
applications part. And honestly, I'm in the role more of a product manager, but having the technical, and what attracted me to this job was the fact that we work with Azure and Power BI, which is really, it's a product that's really taking over the market very fast. Yes, go ahead. Something came to mind.
So kind of, I developed I can tell you how I do it, right? And I basically developed a set of metaphors and approaches, how I try to very quickly calibrate the level of awareness and the existing kind of maturity level of a senior executive that I'm working with, to try and show them what's in it for them.
Yes.
Right. And essentially, you need to understand that people buy anything that they do only for two reasons: either fear or greed. Right. So you have to create enough fear and or greed with whatever stakeholders you're working with for them to buy in to your solution or your program or you're trying to do. Right. Yeah. So data centricity, like I said, it's easier to start small and try to consolidate a few things and then show that that's more efficient. If you can show people the money, that's the way to get buy-in from most of the execs. I think just to create enough greed or enough fear that they're going to miss out. Yes. Mostly, I think fear sometimes works better because when they're seeing, if you pick competitors from their field that are moving in this direction or they're investing heavily to become data-centric, it says, okay, you're showing them what capabilities they have today and where they're going to be in 5 years away from now.
Yeah,
exactly. That can create kind of enough of a whip to get people's buy-in. But the main thing is when you spend time with them, educate them, and create enough awareness. It's not easy. It's all in here, right?
Yeah.
It's all kind of working with people. That's the hardest thing. Because if you think like an engineer, if people were just like systems, or coding instructions, things would be super simple, right? Build an elegant data model that will power business, and that's it. You'll get happiness, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's about how we're building the knowledge of the data we have, and slowly we'll enhancing it and enriching it. So really, that's the way to go. It's so one more thing I want to say in terms of data model, because I work for large banks as well. So to John's question, you can't have a data model for everything. It's if you're looking at a multidimensional data model, like in star schema or Snowflake, right? Yep. Those ones definitely they're built for the purpose of aggregation and for computing power that they provide to kind of look up the data. But the way I see with banks, right? Because like you said, there's thousands of systems and line of business. They have all kinds of that. Sometimes they don't even know how many vendors they work with until they, and that's the project I was on to actually look at their engagement model for their procurement. Yep. So what happens, there's a silo system. So what I've seen happening is there's always the legacy systems that kind of become the source of truth. And the legacy systems from that, you copy the data into other more newer technologies, right? Like either business intelligence, data management, and then, they drop some of that data in Hadoop and have, a data science teams to kind of self-serve the data through some kind of a data share setup. They have the whole eat and share and all that stuff. So I'm talking about, one of the largest banks that has its own AI company they purchased, and you know who they are, the layer 6 organization. So they've created this massive sort of, their direction is self-serve for analytics, right? Problem is with banks is everyone pulls it in different ways and it doesn't align all the way up to the executive level, right? And this is the challenge, is you see the disconnect on data quality just because everyone has their own interpretation of the data. And then what I've seen also happening is the data catalog. So, the core systems have their own dictionary of what that data was built, back in the days, and a brief, maybe technical definition. When it comes to pushing that data all the way up into organization, I've seen it being documented. Finance team documents their own definition. Other teams document their own definition. It's for their own purpose, what this sort of, key in the stable means to me and what it means to the other department.
Yeah. So you nailed it. It's a people issue, and it's mainly like psychological issues / political. It's not, in most cases, it's not a technology issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you take an Excel spreadsheet, you can have a very well managed data in Excel, right? Or you can have the most sophisticated AI-driven, latest cloud-native, whatever tools, which still, like the garbage in, garbage out. And so you need to be aware of people and places in your organization that originate new data life cycles, right? So which is engineers, architects, operational agents when they're responsible for inputting like massive amounts of data, executives, management that are making decisions, people who are making decisions about purchasing new systems, enterprise architects, this kind of stuff, right? So,
so one thing I want to say is the data travels, right? Travels through so many hands. So what I've seen in my experience with large organization is, because I've been in teams that were really like higher up in terms of, the numbers are going into the annual reports of the bank. So what happens when someone audits the process or the data, they come top down, right? They come from the data that goes into this financial report rather than going from the bottom, the root where the data is disconnected and pushed all the way up. So this is the part where it's like the life cycle of the data is really where it's also a big problem, right? The life cycle of the data through the organization.
Yeah, because in 99% of cases, sometimes in 100%, you don't have control over those life cycles. So a lot of times, like people who are on the data side, they're on the receiving side. So the data originates because of the decisions of architecture, engineering, marketing, finance, you name it, right? So it's originates somewhere else in the organization, and even people who are responsible for how the data is structured, how it's being captured, those decisions are made outside of the data organizations. Now, the orgs that are data-centric, the main person in the company is the CDO, the Chief Data Officer. They have good data teams, they have good data management teams, data management departments, and they are able to consolidate, like I said in those examples, that imagine how much of a alignment on the executive side it takes to build everybody's buy-in to read and publish from the same metadata repository in a similar format, right? So I say, like, this is like metadata is the most important data in our organization. This is essentially the knowledge of what our data. These are the processes, these are the policies, how we manage that data. And everybody who engineers anything in this firm or buys anything in this firm, they have to conform to this policies of how we manage knowledge of all of other data. So imagine, like, this is fairly advanced thinking overall, like compared to like many organizations that I see, right? And orgs that can do that now, their costs are way lower. Their cost of experimentation, they have a fairly advanced MLOps going on. They have very high levels of trust in all of the data. They can move kind of the different parts of their business just by scripting them. So for them, changing a process of how they do customer onboarding, it's a matter of modifying those like metadata scripts and pushing them to Git. It will go through a CI/CD pipeline. In I don't know, a few minutes, the process will be changed. Mm-hmm. Right. So these are and this is how I see things can be done in many industries. I've come from like financial background, but I've worked with like a number of industries, especially in the past year. It's not easy, guys. Like, so it's not easy, but it's worth it. And I don't think companies like within probably like 20, 30 years, 10, 20 years, the disruptors are going to be the companies who are going to be data-centric.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I worked about 10 years ago for a company that was building a budget and forecasting solutions for finance. So they were very much on the aggregation side. So we would have, so what really worked for that company is we had consultants, implementation consultants. So we would always have this like boot camp every year, yeah, where the experts in the teams will talk about the technology, we'll talk about best practices, how to implement, right? It's how to advise clients in terms of your data structures that you're building for the new solution, which is it's either S-based or it's analysis services or like some other product, right? And yep, it's also relational data which comes in. So you're actually doing a new structure for the organization to aggregate their accounting practices and budgeting practices.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other questions, folks?
Yes. I think Anka and John, they nail it. I had all the things in my head, they speak my mind, it looked like. But again, I would like to ask you, I know your background, Ruben, also. So I'd like to ask you, say, data warehouse, or I would say data warehouse, not the data lake, because data lake you can put everything, but where does data warehouse sit in your model? So you have model now, what that's it, if you can tell a bit.
So data warehouse is modeled analytical repo, right? So it's an analytical repo that has like, I don't know, star schema, snowflake schema, something where you have data modeled for analytics consumption, right? So the problem with data warehouse is that, yeah, it takes upfront costs for modeling this data and to conforming data. We basically need to build this kind of ETL, right, to bring stuff in. Well, it has to make economic sense. It has to make financial sense, right? So first of all, when I say model, I first mean like the graph semantic models of the like organization itself, right? I didn't mean the relational models or star schema, snowflake schema, that kind of stuff. Right, just to be clear, right? I don't think like you can create a snowflake schema for the whole business. That would be like it's an impossible task, right? But it has its place. I don't think you'll be able, like I said, to do it. I think it's too slow for today's realities. Today's world is more dynamic. You need to move very fast in analytics. So I would say kind of you originate from this very dynamic in-memory data sets that you model in analytic platforms, the likes of like Power BI and Tableau. And you can perfectly do it on diverse data sources, including unstructured data, including data lakes, like raw store data. And then when you operationalize those loads and you need reliability, then you move them out of these platforms, the analytic platforms, and into something that's more of a data warehouse. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure, Ruben. Then I have just a consecutive other question, because it seems like, the model you are talking about, there should be metadata. Of course, that's the first priority you're giving. So
a few levels of it, yeah.
Yeah, a few levels of it, and you actually, divided, okay, which is the transaction data, what the history, and all sort of things. Even don't you think even establish like the model you're talking about, it could be also time consuming or huge investment? I mean, compared to the data warehouse, or
it is, but that one's like kind of much more longer lasting. and that's a model of all your business. And so I'm talking, for instance, that if you're modeling your processes, kind of core processes of your business, core entities, or say you're doing your customer modeling, right? So think about like if you want to define your customer data and conform things like that. So Hugo knows a lot about this. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna be like you're gonna need a model that is a very long lasting, right? Because you want everything that comes and goes to conform to that model. You're actually building the model so that all the different systems and processes, they can conform to this, and there better be like less systems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It is an investment. It's not free.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because when you were talking about the conform dimension, say for example, the customer you talk about. This is my last question. I'll not go bother more. So just to understand, the differences. So, for example, when we build, I was to work with a company called Maersk, is a shipping company, the world largest shipping company. It's a huge company, and they also building that conform dimension, the customer. So finding out the customer from different, systems, and it's still actually they're building. Well, I think they had the MDM system, master data management system. They're all doing actually there. And then when it's come to data warehouse, we're getting the data from the MDM. So do you think it'll be same when it's come to your model? Like, okay, master data management should be lied in
so master
system?
data management is mostly an after the fact thing, right? Most cases. You can use master data management system as a validation for but think about when your data originates. Remember, we're just talking about where your data life cycles originate, right? So if you already have a ton of data that's getting generated in a number of different systems, let's say you're generating your customer data in 10 different systems, and they're not talking well to each other, they're not conforming to this one system, is one thing. Let's say if you create a system that only accepts customer data in one format, you create an API, whatever system, and then all the systems that are writing or updating, creating this customer data, they need to conform to this model. That's one case. But if you already have everything that's not talking to each other, then you don't have many options. You can only deal with things after the fact, and then try to reduce this number of originations and try to make it conform, right? So this is why I'm saying it depends on where you're starting, because like if I was building a business from scratch, I would certainly not build it in such a way so that I have 10 different systems that are generating customer data in 10 different formats. I would define that customer data format from the get-go, and I would protect it. Makes sense, right?
Yep. Thank you so much, Robin. Anyone else? Does anyone else have any question? It was great discussion.
Okay, guys, I'm going to share a couple of more slides. Maybe while you think about more questions, maybe they will provoke a couple of more questions. But here's basically the few takeaways that I wanted to take you guys to live with today. So number one is adopt a data-centric mindset as opposed to app-centric. Think about information first. Think about the money in your wallet and how you want to spend the money, what you want the money to do for you. Don't think about the wallet itself, right? And if you're expanding it to a digital universe, it's just an account. The wallet is an account, right? So your account shouldn't be telling you how you're spending your money. Approach your data lifecycle strategically. So be aware of those different types of principal data types, and try to be strategic on how they originate mainly. And last, focus on culture, awareness, and skills, and not on technology. So technology is the last thing you do. One thing that I tell companies that I'm simplifying decisions about technology. Like people often hire me as a technologist just because of I have kind of a relatively large amount of experience with a bunch of technology and platforms, being director of data at Questrade. But still, technology always comes and goes. technology changes so fast, like it changes every 1 or 2 years. Even if you pick like a really cool technology today, chances are 2-3 years away from now is going to be outdated by something that's cheaper, faster, easier to use, more commoditized. So think of it as a tool, think of it as a container, as the wallet, not as the money. And 3 questions I would like you guys to ask yourself. So what will your organization look like in 3-5 years away from now if you adopt and execute a data-centric approach? And what it will look like if you don't? How will you guys be competitive? And then try to quantify the impact of that in your org. So try to see what are you spending on extra integrations, extra development that's unnecessary, extra system infrastructure that you're paying, like, infrastructure costs, licensing costs, people's resources, and it can be any resources, but try to quantify the impact of that. Okay, what does the app-centric approach versus data-centric approach look like in your system? And with that, I thank you guys very much. I have a bunch of recorded webinars on data-centricity and adjacent topics on infocratic.io, and I'm active only on LinkedIn, so you can connect there if you're not yet connected. I think half of people I know. And that's it pretty much. Connect with me on LinkedIn or shoot me an email. And I'm super happy to discuss these topics with you or help you in any way I can. Okay, I probably need to unshare the screen on my video. Yeah, if you guys have any last minute questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, I raised my hand again, sorry.
Go ahead.
I have another question. So that question is regarding, like you said earlier, because you work with investment data and I work with investment data now and client data, right? The private information. So when you said you have to develop the client profile and don't let other systems dictate how you store it. And this is the challenge I have with this Appcentric, trying to be data-centric organization. And the problem is it's just all API, right? And I'm not an API expert, but API is just, in other words, data passing from one system.
An interface, yeah, it's an interface, yeah.
So challenges now, data is kind of traveling in different places, is being, reassembled through another ETL, and then it's being sent to a financial institution eventually, right? So I'm trying to kind of come with that problem. What's your recommendation on putting, what kind of boundaries would you put in personal data, and where would you store it? In terms of creating more like reference data but keeping it in a more client reference, like when you have accounts, right? Account codes and things like that. What's the right model to not copy it too many times, but yet to be able to reference it? Because let's say statements from a financial institution need to know the account codes in order so you can associate the accounts with the statements. So there's still that need for the data for processing specific, application visuals.
Okay, so you have mixed a few questions there.
Yes, I know it's hard.
So there's from what I've heard, I think I've heard a governance question.
Yeah.
Overall, what are the recommendations in the data-centric world to govern the data from the compliance and privacy standpoint? And there was a question on modeling and how to kind of not allow duplication of data, and kind of also question on architecture maybe.
Yeah.
So Anka, big the 30,000 foot you answer to your question is the data-centric approach makes all of it cheaper and easier. So for instance, if you have data in 15 different places, if you have PII, personal data, customer data in 15 different places, then complying with all the increasing privacy regulations is going to be hell.
Yes.
Right, then kind of making sure that it's kind of secure and only the right people in the right situations and the right systems can access it, providing all sorts of data reports, right? When people say, okay, give me all of my data, how you're using it, that kind of stuff. It becomes hell. And increasingly, those privacy regulations, they're becoming ubiquitous in like all of the different jurisdictions throughout the world, and they're becoming more stricter. Plus, you need to prove to different privacy organs and auditing organs that you are storing that information securely, that you're dealing with it correctly, governing it properly, so that all becomes much cheaper and easier if you use a data-centric approach.
Yes.
Because you know how the data is modeled, you know how it's stored, you have full control, full governance over it. Versus like, it's modeled in 10 different places, in 10 different ways, and then you have to implement security in 10 different. We haven't talked about data mesh platforms or data fabric platforms. They make things easier as well on that side. But they have kind of their own drawbacks. But if you have if you don't have huge data volumes, that they can be real. They can really simplify things, like in the master data, metadata world. Anyways, so when it comes to reporting and like modeling things so that you don't expose like count numbers in reports, again, that's a very individual case question. I think, well, if there's a requirement for you to have account numbers, let's say on statements, you have to implement that, right? And but then you have whatever data store you use, it should be implemented such that, I don't know, developers, they don't see account numbers. Nobody else. Like, so basically the system that generates those statements, only that sees the account numbers. So yeah. In any case, I think actually the cost to comply with all these increasing data regulations, it might be a big driver in organizations becoming data-centric. That's another thing, way companies won't be able to becoming like, I know, I won't be saying it on record, but I'll just say like general, I won't say like specific numbers, but I know that for some very well-known organizations, there's exponentially increasing number of user requests. When people, you can request your data, give me everything that you know about me, kind of request under GDPR.
Yeah.
And to that company, every such request, it costs thousands of dollars.
Yep.
And they don't know what to do with it.
No, yeah, because I heard when you get it out, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So how can you prove it? It's complete data, or is it usable? Yeah.
Yeah. So once that number grows into something that it's seriously affecting your bottom line, you'll think about, okay, how do I change my organizational structure, my organizational architecture to allow for that. And like I said, all businesses right now are complex computers. It's a matter of whether you're architecting them in a data-centric and smart way, or you're allowing them to kind of develop as a very organic matter. Yeah.
Well, one thing you said for sure, it rings a bell, is as you said, a lot of companies will look at the money that involves for them to be compliant for data. But one thing I have to say, working in a large organization, I won't say where, but when the bucket is big enough of the money that we waste for a certain request, that's when they take action, do a project.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is really terrible because there's no, you're not looking at the impact of how it faces, you're looking at how much money we're losing because of it, right? So you're right, a shift in mindset has to happen.
Yeah. But on the other hand, I also have startups who are very aware of the concept of data centricity, and they're making sure that their company is data centric from the get-go. Right, so they're adopting kind of standards and policies, and they're hiring people who are thinking this way. So I consulted recently like a fintech startup that they're fully bought into the concept of data centricity.
Yeah. So maybe we'll keep in touch because we need someone like you to build a data centric.
Sure. Happy to. Yeah.
Here, and I'm sure, we'll get a lot of value. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I think John has a question. I know we are bit up. We don't have much time.
Yeah,
But
no,
John, please
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah, I have 20 minutes for
Actually,
sure.
very quick one. So I think you mentioned that data-centric right now it's more a strategic and mindset. Then as a technical person, probably far from those original data owners, how could we contribute or influence? Do you have any tips or thoughts?
Unfortunately, it's very hard, John, because let's say if your area of responsibility is technology only, and like in a smaller portion of the organization, there can be people high up who can do much more damage. Right? An example being the proverbial CFO who decides to spend a few $1 million on an ERP. That's that ERP is going to actually cost them not a few $1 million. It's going to cost them probably tens of millions or hundreds of millions in complexity, cost, integration, dealing with the and trying to undo that ERP 5-10 years later. Right. So trying to show people costs, wearing a business hat and trying to show other people in the organization, non-technical people in the organization, what the dollar numbers look like, that's always a good exercise. I think people who are kind of on the intersection between technology and business, these are the people who bring the most value. I actually think that I hate the division into technology and business and data for that matter, because it's all like, okay, some people, they know just how to use technology better, that's it. And today there are people on in all the businesses you will find people who are getting machine learning degrees, learning Python, learning different like ways to build systems, low code platforms, things like that. And you'll find people on technology side who are helping finance folks develop their strategy. So I've seen that all. And I think if you are on the technology side, best thing you can do is build more relationship with business folks and try to show them the dollars, try to build that awareness with them so that like you have a critical mass of people supporting you. And then if you want to make bigger changes, you're better equipped to do so.
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah, hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we can. If anyone doesn't have any more question, we can end today here. Ruben, it was great session. So many things to know, so many things to learn. You still have some question. I know I can reach you for sure. But it was great engagement.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. Thank you everyone for the questions. You're a wonderful audience. And
thank you much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And
see
please
you
share your
online,
slide.
and hopefully we'll find some. Yep.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, what do you want me to do?
Please share your slide so I can share with all the team members, all the attendees. So.
Oh yeah, the slide deck. Yeah. Is it okay if I send via email or LinkedIn?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. That should be good. Thank you.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you everyone.
And have a good night.
Discussion.
Bye.
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 Bye.